Welcome into episode 21 of Carroll's Cadence. I'm your host, Brandon Carroll, and I'm set to bring you an in-depth look at the Florida Gators Week 3 opponent in the Tennessee Volunteers today. Let me go ahead and get this out of the way before we get into it because we got a packed show for y'all today. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your favorite memory of the Tennessee-Florida rivalry down in the comments because we're going to get this thing rolling, and it's Tennessee week, folks. But today I'm joined by Sports Illustrated Fan Nation's VolsCountry publisher, Evan Crowell, as we dissect the Volunteers ahead of their Week 3 matchup with the Gators. This channel's dedicated to teaching ball, and I thought there was no better way to do that than bringing on a fellow knower of ball and Mr. Crowell here. So, Evan, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. That's a good. I'll take ball knower right off rip. That's the number one thing. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If there's one thing that we do here, it's no ball. So anyone that comes on also has to know ball.
Right.
So I just want you to know that. But kind of just jumping right into it, I'd feel remiss not to begin Tennessee week coverage here at Carroll's Cadence by not discussing the enigma that is the quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers and Joe Milton. Just through 2 games, what have you seen from him and how has he kind of lived up to the expectations you set for him this offseason, and then also the national expectation?
Well, I've got it. I'm shades on. I'm Joe Milton indoors. I'm Broadway Joe for you guys. I know it's Tennessee week for y'all, so I'm getting y'all ready for the pregame flicks, the pregame walkthrough, all that Joe Milton stuff. But yeah, through the first 2 games, I mean, and on a serious note, I don't know that I've learned a ton about Joe Milton than what I've already known. At Tennessee, I think the stats now, he has 21 total touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And I would attribute 80 to 85% of that to Josh Heupel and his scheme and just getting the football out. You know, you're reading a front side concept. You're just 1-2 at the most and then getting the football out of your hands. When he's had to move beyond that, it's been inconsistent at best. The rushing's great. The playmaking is awesome. The arm's great, but sometimes the inaccuracies are there, and I still have the same concerns that I had with him that I did even before the season started.
For sure. And I'm not even going to try to duck it. I gave a pretty bold take in my SEC prediction show regarding this Tennessee Volunteers team and their season outlook, and it kind of came down to Joe Milton. I did say that they were going to regress under Joe Milton, and I was also very high on Hendon Hooker, so I don't want it to seem like it was all because of Milton. Don't get me wrong. This is one of the most talented players in college football. If he plays up to his potential, the sky is the limit for Tennessee. I want that to be known. He's the prototypical size for a quarterback at 6'5", 238 pounds, has a cannon strapped to his right arm, can launch the ball basically the entire length of the football field at this point. He can drop the ball in the bucket when he's targeting deep down the field, has functional athleticism to make plays with his legs. But at the same time, like you said, he's prone to consistency on the rhythm throws. The accuracy in short to intermediate it can kind of vary at times. He's been benched twice in his collegiate career at 2 different schools, and he's had chances. And I said, what makes this time different? And through 2 games, I've gotten to watch Tennessee in both contests. I thought he's controlled the offense well. Like you said, I thought he was taking the short side concepts and things like that really in stride. He was able to kind of produce in the offense that Josh Heupel has established there with the Volunteers. He's worked his reads well, taken what the defense has given him. He still has no turnovers on his resume, and he's really just kept that offense moving. But then there's times where I look and I see a slant being skipped into the dirt, or a ball sailing over the head of a streaking wideout that's only 15 yards down the field. And it's just, I'm interested to see the progression season long because of those minuscule errors now that could potentially become more important as they go and play the Georgia and Sanford Stadium or the teams that they have to go and produce against this year. It's going to be a difficult road for him moving forward. And it feels a lot like the story I saw last year in Gainesville, up close and personal with covering the Gators and Anthony Richardson. Now, I'd like to preface, this is not the player that this is not Anthony Richardson. because I disagree there. That's not the comparison that needs to be made. But on the surface, you look at these two, you see physical intangibles, you see the traits that are present with their arm strength, you see the athleticism that they bring to the table. But then you look at there's concerns regarding accuracy, precision, execution. It's eerily similar. So now you have guys who have the tools. They have what it takes to be that weapon offensively, to be one of the best players in college football. I'm just waiting for them to put it all together. Richardson never did at Florida. Can Milton do that for Tennessee this year? I think that's the biggest question.
Yeah, 100%. And I think to a certain degree, when we look back in the results, I think it's fair to expect, even if you're down on Tennessee this year, the overall roster talent and the stuff that Heupel does. And the one positive that I take out of these first 2 weeks is that I'm as high on Heupel as I've ever been. Like the fact that he's been able to produce with this passing offense, which Milton's been inconsistent to bad at times. The receivers also share a bit of the blame. There's been a lot of drops. The passing offense has really not been going at the tune that they were last year with Hendon Hooker. And, you know, all those guys like on the outside, you got Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt, which definitely changes the game in some capacity. But the fact that they've been able to do all these things makes me think, hey, 8 wins should be the floor for a football team like this. But even then, man, like when Anthony Richardson was at Florida, that's a dominant athlete in the pocket that can just improvise. And I think Joe is a good athlete, but Anthony Richardson is a dominant. I mean, he went to the combine and had the best performance since Cam Newton.
Absolutely. That's why I preface that they are not the same. That is not the comparison.
Not the same.
The athleticism is functional with Joe. It's special with Anthony.
Yeah, it's so different, and that's not the feel that I get it. I mean, like, I feel like Joe can move. I'm comfortable like scheming in some design runs, but I see people saying that all the time, and it does not make sense to me. But I also, on the contrary, I want to flip it to this also. I don't think the sky's falling for Joe. I think we're 2 weeks in. I think football takes time. If you're looking around college football, there are exceptions. Like Caleb Williams is special. Michael Penix is special. Guys like that are, Shedeur Sanders is special. But if you look at the college and NFL games right now, like the offenses that are they're not at that level right now. Look at Bama the other night against Texas.
Yeah.
Like teams are going to struggle. They're going to struggle to put it together early in the year. And I'm not completely writing him off after 2 games. Because again, I mean, he still hasn't turned the football over. I don't feel like he's made any turnover-worthy plays. So there's room to improve, but I think that the floor that we've seen is more than enough to think that if the receivers correct some things, it'll be fine.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing just to look at this year is seeing how the Vols offense kind of changes under Milton versus what it was with Hooker. Like you said, the passing game isn't working as high of a rate as it did a year ago, and that's noticeable. But I think there are some things that Tennessee does that is kind of being highlighted this year, because this is an offense that at its best, they want to operate with a play close to every 20 seconds. They want a rapid pace, one of the fastest in college football, designed to keep a defense on their heels. But a misconception about an offense that moves like that in today's modern game, a high octane, fast tempo offense, is that it's an air raid, is that they are just going to sling it around the yard. That is not the case with this Tennessee team, because they want to run the football. They did it as a 55% clip a year ago. They've done it at 56% of their play calls this year. They are running the football consistently, and they have 2 capable backs that can do it, play in and play out. Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. They are very talented ball carriers for this Tennessee team, and it kind of creates this idea that Tennessee is a lot more balanced than a lot of people are going to say, just because of how quick and how fast they move. But in Heupel's offense, it's a balanced attack. They want to run the football to then have defenses stack the box. Boom, there's the deep shot. That's just how they're going to try to operate. And I think that is geared toward aiding Milton into, not having to be that guy, that, kind of player that has to make all the plays. He doesn't have to be a playmaker on every single down. They're doing things that allows him to settle in, gain control of the offense, to then potentially later in the years when he starts taking those significant strides. Would you agree?
1,000,000%. And that's where the floor for this offense comes into play. Because again, even if the passing offense is not right, Tennessee is an elite offensive rushing attack through 2 weeks. You look around the SEC, I think they're number one in the SEC in yards per carry, and I think total yardage. Like you were saying earlier, like Milton has 63 passing attempts this year, and there's a three-headed attack of Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and then Dylan Sampson had 4 touchdowns in week 1. They've got 67 carries among the 3 of them. So they are running the football more with those 3 on the field than they are throwing it with Milton, and that's where it all comes from. They're all so physical, all so strong after contact, all capable out of the backfield, and for me it all starts with Jalen Wright. 200-yard games in his first 2 starts. You're never tackling him one-on-one. That I do not want to see him in the open field at all. That is not fun. And he does it so efficiently, averaging about a first down per touch right now. Yeah, 9.3 yards per carry. I just think so positively of him, and them getting him back this year was a really big deal for this offense.
Yeah, and I know coming into this season, kind of one of the question marks for this Tennessee team was the offensive line. And through 2 weeks, like you said, they've had a 100-yard rusher, a guy that's in both games, he's ran for over 100 yards. You've had a guy score 4 touchdowns in a game. They've really established their offensive line at a rate that they, wanted to see at this stage in the season. Now, obviously, it was against Virginia and Austin Peay, but it was still 2 games that were they were dominant on the ground. That's what you wanted to see from Tennessee this year. And so now they're moving into a week 3 contest. Obviously, Florida is not a dominant defense, but they are an improved defense. They are an improved interior defensive line. And just having that ability to see those results on the offensive line through 2 weeks for Tennessee gives them confidence going into the rest of the season that they can rush the ball at this rate throughout the entire year. Now, it might not come at the same clip in terms of, you might not get to run it 56% of the time as they have through 2 games this year, but you're going to be able to do it when you do kind of defer to the rushing game. It'll be efficient. Do you think that this offensive line is built to sustain that success through 2 weeks in the rest of the season when they go and play those tougher opponents?
I think the impressive thing for me about Tennessee's offensive line coming into play is just the physicality and the tempo they're setting. And again, I get, like we said, it's Virginia and Austin Peay, and that's the interesting thing about this week's matchup to me. Is Tennessee going to keep? Are they going to be able to play with that level of physicality against a Florida, a team that recruits well every year, brings in SEC bodies? It's the Florida Gators. Are you going to be able to do it against them? But the attitude and mindset that I've seen from them has been really impressive. You're potentially adding Cooper Mays back this week as well. For my money, the best offensive lineman on the team when he gets back. I don't know. John Campbell's been really starring at right tackle or at left tackle, excuse me. But you're just getting a leader back there. So I think for the rest of SEC play, I feel more confident than I did 3 weeks ago about Tennessee's offensive line, and I can say that definitively, especially on the ground, man. They get after it and they have bodies.
For sure. And speaking of having bodies, let's flip to the defensive side of the ball. That was another kind of question mark coming into the season. How can Tennessee's defense improve? We know they're going to be talented offensively. We know Heupel's going to have them ready to go. They're going to be high octane, fast tempo, and they're going to be able to score points. But then you look to the defensive side of the ball. That was kind of an Achilles heel at points last year. How do you think Tim Banks' squad has done so far this year, and what's really stood out to you from the defense through 2 weeks?
Well, ironically enough, I think Tennessee's defense has kind of set the tone for this football team in the first 2 weeks, which I think was unthinkable a month ago. Like, I don't think anyone would have been sitting here saying Tennessee's defense after Virginia and Austin Peay is pacing the way. But they are. I mean, Aaron Beasley in the middle of that defense is one of the best football players that I've covered during my time at the college level. He is so fun to watch. I think all kudos in the world to Tim Banks for going out there and getting bodies that he wanted and players that he thought were capable through the transfer portal and on the recruiting trail. And the Tennessee defense is the most fun part of my film watch every week.
Yeah, and you mentioned Aaron Beasley. I texted you on my way back from Utah. I was watching their game against Virginia on the plane, and I texted you and I said, "This Aaron Beasley dude is a fun watch. He is elite. I love watching Aaron Beasley. I think he just has a nose for the football. He plays pissed off, which you want to see from that second level defender, and he's always finding a way to make a play or be in on the play. He's flocking to the football every single down. And it really, like you said, this defense has set the tone. Aaron Beasley has set the tone for this defense to set the tone for the team as a whole. I also have liked what you have something to say?
Yeah, I was about to hop in because I actually do have something to say off the Aaron Beasley thing. The best duo on Tennessee, I know a lot of people, it's Joe Milton and Squirrel White. Is it Joe Milton and Bruma? It's Omar Norman Lott and Aaron Beasley. And I get so hyped up when I talk about this defense. The energy's flipped, Brandon. We're off and running. When Omar Norman Lott can cross the guard's face, and then you can send Aaron Beasley on that stunt backside for sacks, which they've done twice this year. That is something this defense could not do last year. And it's you go out and get Omar Norman Lott in the transfer portal. Credit to Tim Banks. And then, again, just another fantastic example of Beasley being an athlete and getting after it. They're so fun to watch in that front seven.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me into my next point of Tennessee really, yes, they've had their struggles at points, but this defensive line is also a part that is vastly improved from years past. I feel like every time I have watched them, every time there's a rushing play or they're making something happen in the backfield, it's because the defensive line is getting so much push up front. And that hasn't been something that's been a norm for Tennessee in quite some time. You mentioned Norman Lott as being someone that is consistently making plays in the backfield. I also want to give a shout out to Omari Thomas, who yes. I think he has been a unsung hero for this team. It's not going to show up in the stat sheet, but he's doing exactly what they need him to do from that interior that gives them the ability to make plays in the backfield against opponents week in and week out. And obviously, like we've said, it's Virginia and Austin Peay. You want to see it continue into SEC play. But from what we have, from the sample size that we have, those areas look vastly improved, and Tim Banks is doing an excellent job with getting Tennessee ready to go. It's all just a matter of, can it remain consistent, and can they have the ability to maintain it when they do face another offense that is able to put up points at a high rate.
100%. And having, you got those two on the interior, because Omari Thomas has been great this year. I've loved everything I've seen from him. And having those two bodies right there, him and Norman Lott are two big humans. And the floor there is already high. You're going to have to eat them up with two blockers, account for at least one of them with two on every single play. And that's just going to raise your run defensive ceiling. But then in pass protection, or in pass rushing, how they've pushed the pocket and allowed rushers like Tyler Barron to get around and get after the quarterback, make big plays, completely changed the floor for this defense.
With where we are right now in the season, what do you think you want to see from Tennessee to know that this defense is legit, that it's not a byproduct of who they faced rather than who they are?
I mean, I think this all starts with the secondary. I really think it does. We're sitting here. That was the question last year. It's been the question mark this year. I thought they've been pretty good. There's been some coverage busts. There was a rotation last week where the corner just flat out fell on his face. And it was an easy touchdown for Austin Peay. But, I think they played well, man. I'm looking over the stats right now, and I'm looking over thinking about the film that I was watching earlier this morning. And I think Kamal Haddon's taken a step this year. I think he has. He had two pass interferences last week, but he also had two takeaways, two big turnovers, or one that should have been that fumble that was recovered by Tennessee, but then overturned. And that's the question. They were bad last year, real bad. I'm thinking over so many real bad, real ugly. And Florida, for all we talk about for them not being able to push the ball downfield consistently through these first 2 weeks, they looked better against McNeese last week. Are they going to be able to do it against Tennessee? I don't know. That's the matchup for the week.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And one thing that I kind of always come to whenever I talk with other people about the teams that they cover, is every team has its wait and sees. Florida has its wait and sees. I want to see, like you said, I want to see them be able to push the ball downfield at a more consistent rate. We know that's not going to be something they do every single play. That's not going to be their identity, but they're going to have to do it to beat a Tennessee, to beat, the teams that like a Kentucky in 2 weeks. It's something that's going to be necessary for them to do to kind of contend, at least in that mid-tier SEC range, which is where they're kind of at right now, or potentially, towards the bottom. But that's beside the point. There's a lot of things we look at for teams and we say, all right, let's wait and see. All right, let's wait and see here. It can be a bottom of the barrel G5 team. Let's wait and see. Or it can be the mighty Georgia, 2-time defending national champions. There's always an area or two you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to have to wait and see if they're able to figure that out before I give them their praise and say, yeah, this is a team. This is a championship squad, whatever. However your expectations. Can they exceed those expectations? We're going to have to wait and see. Areas of skepticism or concern. What are you really waiting to see on this team-wide, for you to say, yeah, they can exceed the expectations I set for them before the year started?
I mean, we just talked about it. That defensive backfield is obviously a major play, but I mean, I think it starts and finishes with Joe Milton.
Yeah.
And being able to push the ball downfield at a consistent clip. They abandoned the downfield passing attack in the first 2 weeks against Virginia and Austin Peay. You could say maybe that's because they're hiding it. They don't want to give too much of the playbook away. But you could also say, hey, they took their chances early and they didn't hit them. Maybe they lost confidence during those first 2 series and wanted to make sure that they got out of there comfortably. But against Georgia, you can't do that because they're too good defensively. They're too sound schematically. They're going to get after those screens. They're going to be able to shut down the short intermediate passing attacks. You're going to have to be able to push the ball downfield. That's what changes Tennessee from being an 8-4-ish football team this year to a 10-2, 11-1 type football team.
Yeah, for sure. And they get the opportunity to start showing some of that in week 3 against the Gators team. There's still a lot of question marks surrounding Florida this year. There are plenty of wait and sees for the group heading into week 3 against Tennessee, who ranks number 11 in college football right now. It's an historic rivalry. We know what Florida and Tennessee is. It's been largely controlled by Florida since the turn of the century. But Tennessee's starting to make something shake there in the past few years. They've kept it close. We've started to see some noise from Tennessee and have the potential to win their first contest in Gainesville since 2003 this weekend. How do you see this game shaking out, and what's really the difference maker between Tennessee and Florida on Saturday night?
The difference to me, honestly, isn't even a matchup on the field. The difference to me is Josh Heupel and the mentality that he's instilled in this Tennessee football program since he came in. It's been about breaking norms. It's been about doing things that Tennessee hasn't done in a long time. He walks around with an attitude and a swagger and a confidence that you have to be able to restore a program that hadn't really done anything for the last 20 years. Last year, they talked about the same thing, Florida week. They talked about beating the Gators, rewriting norms. Tennessee hadn't beaten Florida since 2016. They get that huge win at home, and it propels them forward into that Alabama win, into that late season success, into winning the Orange Bowl, doing all those things. Going to the Swamp, they haven't won there since 2003. It's going to be a tough environment. I just have so much confidence in him that he is going to have this football team ready to come compete. And I think overall the roster top to bottom is better this year than Florida's. The bodies that we're going to see on the field, and I think that he will have those bodies ready to come play and ready to come compete.
Well, we will wait and see. I'll give my official prediction on Friday. Evan, it was a pleasure, man. I appreciate you sliding through to talk some ball with me today. This won't be the last time, so gear up for another Carroll's Cadence appearance in the future. Make sure to check out VolsCountry on the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation site for some of the best Tennessee football and recruiting coverage in the market. Follow my boy Evan on Twitter at Evan V. Crowell. That is CROWELL. And his name is also right there. But you can find me on Twitter at It's Be Carroll. Stay tuned for my Florida-Tennessee preview and prediction episode on Friday. Until then, like I said in the intro, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your favorite Gators Vols memory down below. For Carroll's Cadence, I'm Brandon Carroll, and we gone.
Let's go golfing.
Let's go golfing.